Introduce myself a little bit. I work at the Canadian section of the Institute of American Studies in Krakow, and my interests in Canadian veteran system come from the fact that, well, Polish, yep, too far away, okay, Polish and Canadian troops were deployed to Afghanistan at more or less the same time. And when they were coming back, well, Canada had a ready-made system of veteran care for their soldiers, while Poland was only beginning to prepare its one. And I was asked to write a brief report what Canadian veteran system is like. I got into it, I got extremely impressed, and that's why I later on wrote a book about it, and in this way I also came by the problem of Aboriginal people in well, Canadian veteran system. That's why my presentation today is to be about First and Second World War Aboriginal veterans. And I decided to use as a kind of title for my presentation part a quote from Stephen Leacock, which is general kind of approach towards veterans. That is, when they come back, well, they are appreciated, and later on, when some time passes, everybody wants them to, well, reintegrate as quickly as possible and, in a way, vanish from, well, the public sphere. What about First and Second World War Aboriginal veterans? Let's first start from some numbers. During the First World War, well, Aboriginal participation was probably around 8,000 soldiers, half of them status Indians. During the Second World War, it was a little bit lower, about 6,000, once again, more or less half of them status Indians. During both wars, they were fighting in, well, units together with other Canadian soldiers. No ethnic units were organized, even though in certain units there were more Aboriginal people than in others. Traditionally, many of them became snipers, messengers, reconnaissance leaders, although during the Second World War, well, Aboriginal people were also serving in other capacities. Post-war reports after both wars are absolutely uniform in appreciation of First Nations conduct. They were giving absolutely excellent, well, evaluation of their well, participation. So we would seem that such excellent evaluation should go with kind of equal treatment as far as, well, their veterans' benefits were concerned. Usually the officials, especially from the Department of Indian Affairs, were, well, actually totally shocked that despite full knowledge of language of command very often, and the necessity to operate in a little bit alien environment, native people were doing perfect. As far as, well, testimonies of Aboriginal veterans are concerned, I haven't found many from the First World War. From the Second World War, well, they are rather positive. It gave them certain type of self-confidence that they were as good soldiers as others have been. They did not feel discriminated against when in the armed forces, yet it seems that they faced discrimination upon return to Canada. Generally, both wars changed little as far as legal, social, and economic status of First Nations was concerned, and veterans were included in these sections. They remained, well, the words of the Crown, deprived of the privileges of other citizens. As well, General was saying today, returning First Nation veterans were getting enthusiastic reception in their communities when they returned. But especially those who were status Indians, they soon learned that when they returned to Canada, they were subject to the provisions of Indian Act and under authority of Indian agents who, once again, quoting the General, just like in case of, well, residential schools, there were good Indian agents and there were, well, bad Indian agents. Disparate treatment of Aboriginal veterans was visible after both of conflicts. If we look at First World War veterans, for them, only the disability pensions which were paid were equal to those which were paid to non-Aboriginal soldiers, but it should be remembered that in both cases they were rather small. If any additional support was granted, it was usually half of the sum allowed to the white side. It concerned especially dependents' benefits. There are many inequalities in treatment of Aboriginal veterans, but, well, due to very strict time limit, I will try to show it on the basis of soldier settlement plan, which was the key part of veteran, well, care plan. During the First World War, veterans who wanted to enter into the soldier settlement plan could get, well, a piece of land upon preferential preferential conditions. This was quite a good deal. Well, in respect of returned Indian soldiers, administration of Soldier Settlement Act was taken over by the Department of Indian Affairs, and in this respect, a lot of decisions depended on Indian agents. Because of such approach, veterans of Aboriginal descent could not make their own decisions. In order to apply, an agent had to prepare a document known as a confidential report, which was containing a recommendation whether, well, a veteran should be granted the loan or not. And, well, here the example, the perfect example is, well, the man who has got equally difficult name as I have, so I won't dare to read it, but I'm sure you know the name very well. The most renowned, well, Aboriginal First World War veteran, well, highly decorated, who, from his Indian agent, got the following opinion. Well, and that was the end of his dream about his own farm. He was a troublemaker anyway, fighting for the rights of his people. On average, First World War Aboriginal veterans received usually half of the median loan given to non-Aboriginal soldier settlers, and of course it meant lower quality soil, well, outdated equipment, and generally less chances for development. If we look at the reports from the Department of Indian Affairs, well, not many veterans applied, and from this number, well, not so many well, grants were awarded. As you see, by 1927, when the well, plan was coming to the end, only 224 veterans were settled. Nevertheless, the Department of Indian Affairs well, trumpeted success. Well, what I found from the reports, well, everything was excellent, perfect, at least on paper. Well, I haven't found data concerning Aboriginal veterans who entered the plan, but those who were, well, non-Aboriginals, 50% of them went bankrupt when Great Depression came. I think that the rate probably was similar in the case of Aboriginal veterans as well. During the Second World War, Canadian authorities prepared very comprehensive system of veteran care. As you know, Veterans Charter was excellent, and the Department of Veterans Affairs actually learned from the mistakes of the First World War and was doing everything to avoid, well, another lost generation. Well, disabled veterans got, well, comprehensive medical plan and pensions, which were more kind of rational. In comparison to First World War, all veterans, able-bodied and disabled, were also given a chance to choose from a variety of options which would help them to reintegrate. In theory, Aboriginal people were, and their dependents were eligible to all benefits and solutions offered in Veterans Charter. Legislation did not distinguish between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal veterans, with one exception, and this exception was, once again, Veterans Land Act. It should be remembered, however, that benefits were not awarded automatically. Veterans had to apply for them, and, well, most of them were doing it through the help of trained advisors from the Department of Veterans Affairs. In the case of status Indians, the old, well, pattern was retained. Benefits were, well, awarded if applications was placed by the Indian agent. Well, the Veterans Land Act was comprehensive during the Second World War, and it provided a very good loan, which could be, part of it could be annulled after the conditions were met. Yet, status Indians were not allowed to participate in it, and they were only given grants of more than $2,000, which could be used to upgrade their farms if they had any. But in this way, they were excluded from other options, so they could not count on further loans from Department of Veterans Affairs, usually also not on the commercial loans. And of course, these loans were not awarded automatically. Only 1,300 status Indians actually received them. Well, the complaints about the unfair treatment became vocal only in late 70s and then in 1990s. And first after the reports, it was established that maybe more recognition should be given to Aboriginal veterans, and apology would do as well. But there was nothing about compensation. The issue was solved only in 2000 through the National Roundtable on Aboriginal Veterans. Every veteran of First, Second, and Korean War could apply for a compensation payment. From what I've read, the opinion of Aboriginal people was rather negative, that it was not a true compensation, and the fact that it was limited to spouses only was also criticized, and the application period, 4 months, was extremely short. But the agreement was finally signed because veterans, especially those in their late 80s, felt that that may not live long enough to receive anything. To sum it up, the care of veterans after both World Wars posed huge challenge for everybody, for all belligerents. Long terms of help for veterans and their families were immense everywhere. Canada was exceptional when compared to other countries. Why? Because during both conflicts, your government managed to prepare a relatively far-reaching and efficient system of care for returning soldiers. The second thing is plans were combined with proper funding. Canada did not suffer from a war destruction, and your economy remained relatively stable in the post-war years. Nevertheless, Aboriginal veterans after both conflicts received equal treatment only on paper. In reality, that they were deprived of the possibility to make their own informed decisions about the way they want to reintegrate into civilian society. And, after the initial months of the post-war appreciation of their military service, we would say that they really were to vanish into thin air and give no trouble. Thank you very much.